Welcome back to the channel here at Camo Crappie. We like to bring a lot of crappie fishing with the Livescope footage. If that's something that you like, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications button. That way you're always notified whenever we get out a new video. And it's been a really busy last, spring really, I guess. And finally got to come to get back to just fishing and filming. We've been all over the country fishing. I hadn't got to really do as much filming, but back on Green River Lake this week, and it's finally come down. All the lakes in Kentucky have been way up. They finally got them back down to where they're a little bit more manageable. Fished it was 2 weekends ago, and ended up placing third in a local event with the bluegrass crappie anglers there on Green River Lake, and that was the last time I'd fished Green River Lake. Was about 2 weeks ago, and it's a completely different lake this week, a lot better. The crappie are spawning. I was catching crappie that you see that one there, big belly on it. I even caught some that the eggs were coming out of them. And this week I've caught, I know I've caught, I think 6 limits, but they've all been put back. I have not put a knife in any fish. Put them all back. Whenever I get ready to eat some, I'll catch me a mess and clean them and eat them. But it's been having a lot of fun fishing, been learning. You could see here this pile is full of fish. And the reason why I got it down in that bottom screen there is because, and I'll have some with it switched here later, but what I'm doing is I'm using the Livescope to find the fish, but because of the wind and the waves, I'm pitching and casting. I'm not just straight pole jigging them like what a lot of my videos are, and I've done that this week. Was real successful with it this week, but I found that a lot of the bigger fish, I was able to catch them just casting and pitching out to them, and honestly, that's one of my favorite ways to fish, is doing that with the shorter pole. Not that I dislike using a jigging pole and doing it the long way, but that's all I've been able to do for most of the last 2 or 3 months, was just straight pole, because you've seen the videos. I had to chase them down. A lot of times they weren't related to structure, and wasn't able, and that's a pretty good fish there, wasn't able to cast to them because I was targeting individual fish. And here you can see these fish, they're hanging out at the top of the structure, and I've got a video I'll probably release later this week. A buddy of mine went fishing with me, and I didn't do the Livescope filming then. We were just casting to them, just kind of having fun, and I did a little bit of filming just from behind, and I'll probably put that video later this week. But that's what we did that morning. And he had a guide trip, and they'd called and they were getting off work early, so he left to go do a guide trip, and I had a few hours left, so I thought, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try to just dedicate to pitching and casting, get some Livescope footage. You see there, you see the jig falling there about 26 feet. It's right there, and I'm going to give it bring it just a little bit. There it is. You see the jig falling there at 16. Here comes the fish, and I got him. But right there I'm using monofilament line, and the monofilament, it will not show up on the Livescope. Now I will switch to a braided line here in a little bit, and you'll be able to see the whenever you see right here, I'm switching to the braid line right there, and you're going to be able to see this line in this next clip. So just cast it out there. And like I said, the wind, it's rocking and rolling. Let's see where the line comes down. And I believe at this point, there it is. You can see the line there. I got the fish. So I believe at that point we'll see if I step on spot lock there. No, I hadn't spot locked yet. Now, there was a lot of times that I would get close to the pile and I would spot lock to hold me close to it. And then from there, I would wait till it pan around to it, and as you can see, the earlier clip had a bunch of fish on it. I was beginning to pick them off, and some of them were going a little bit further into the pile, which there's still several there on it. But and like on that one there, I never did see the fish hit the bait. I just I felt the bite, and that's a lot of fun whenever you're able to kind of fish more of a traditional method. Those a little bit better fish. I ended up weighing them all for that day, what me and him had, and then what I had after he left, and we ended up with 7 over a pound. There's several more that were right there at a pound, but I think our total for that day was like 767, which for Greener Lake, that's a good weight. I think they had a tournament there, 10 pounds. May have won the tournament. I didn't fish it. I was on vacation, but anytime that I can catch 7 fish all over a pound, I'm tickled. So you could see that that bow and that line there, and that's kind of like an indicator. It lets me know that I'm close whenever I'm doing this pitching and casting to them. A lot of times, of course, whenever I'm straight poling, I like to be able to see where my bait is and where everything is going with, and I like to do that too whenever I'm casting. But whenever you get these types of conditions, you see the bow, so I know I'm right in it, and I know that I want to hold just above it. I slowed it down here so you can see it, but I knew that I'd seen it, and you can see if you back up the clip, but you could see my bait was just at the top of that. So I knew at that point I wanted to keep a little bit of pressure to it, just to let that bait glide over top of that structure. Whenever you know where your bait is, that gives you that ability to understand. If you see your bait down in the structure and you feel it bump against a limb or something, hey, I don't need to set the hook. I need to make sure that it pulls back on it. Or if you know that you're above the structure and you feel contact, you better set the hook, because that's a fish. So that's just another way of using this forward-facing technology. And you see, there it goes. But using this forward-facing sonar and technology to be able to decipher what's going on under the water. I like being able to see the fish eat it, but sometimes it's actually to a disadvantage. I know earlier in the day we had a much calmer conditions, and a lot of times I'd see myself tensing up whenever I seen that fish coming, and I inadvertently sometimes you might change something. So you always want to, especially with these crappie, is keep your bait either falling consistently or pendling them back to you consistently. You've seen on some of the other videos that any little bit of change, whether you jig it or it falls on them after it has their attention, can turn them off to it. So what I would use it to do is, of course, the Livescope would point and show me where this tree was. And then once I knew where the tree was, because I didn't have to drive up, throw a buoy marker down on it, I could see it out there in front of my boat. The only problem was the wind was going sideways and forward and behind you. It kept wanting to move. But once I would know exactly where it was, I was throwing an 1/8 ounce jig, and when there wasn't as much wind, I would kind of pitch it out there. But if the wind was really rocking, those fish, that pile we're in 24 foot of water, and that pile is sitting at the top at 14 feet. So I just kind of rocket that bait down, about 30 feet out in front of me, because it hitting the top of the water at with them being at that distance, it wasn't spooking them. You could see in the video that a lot of times the bait would have to get within about 5 feet before they would react. And the sun had come out. I switched to that curly tail there with the chartreuse tail, and they were eating it up when the sun went behind the clouds, and they would still eat it. But I'd switch up to that pole that had the braid line, and it had more of a natural colored bait, and they eat it up. I started out that morning whenever I was fishing with my friend, and I was using that chartreuse tail because that's what I'd used the day before, and they'd done real good. And I was catching fish, but my fish were 8 inches, and he was catching fish, and his were 10 inches or over a pound. So it didn't take me long to change up and go to a more natural colored bait. But then after he left, that sun come out, and I switched back to that, and I was able to catch several fish on it, but also several fish off of the natural colored bait as well. The bait that I'm using in this video is it's made by Crappie Magnet at Leland Lures bait, but it is their Slab Curly, maybe the name of it. I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but I do know that it's the like twisty tail or curly tailed grub, and I've become a big fan of this lure. I've been using it for maybe a month now, and I've caught several fish with it. I really like it. So, and it's very durable. I've been using the same, I think I've been using the same grub for like 3 days on that chartreuse jig head, and it works really well. They're very durable, and their crappie magnets are very durable too. That's what I'd used most of the week, was Percy colored crappie magnet. Actually, one of my neighbors said he wasn't catching any fish, and I reached down and I'd gotten a pack, had an extra pack of them, so I just put them in my net and handed them over to his boat. And I talked to him the next day, and I was like, "Did you catch fish?" He's like, "Oh yeah." So I was glad that we were able to get him on some fish as well. But I think, I'm trying to see which rod that is. I used 2 different rods. I used the I think that one there is the Trick Stick by Jenko, and then that was the one that had the natural bait tied to it, and it caught the bigger crappie. But then the other rod that I was using was the TCB rod by BnM. It's the Leland Lures specific rod. It's a nice little rod. It's a 2-piece rod, so it fits perfect in your car or truck because you can break it down. But they had built that rod for, to be versatile, and I had gotten it a while back, but hadn't gotten to use it because just had to target those individual fish, and I'd been using a 13-foot pole and chasing them down. Well, now that they're back to structure and I'm able to pitch again, I got it out, and I think the first day that I used it, the first cast I had a crappie on it, the first cast I might have had a bluegill, then a crappie, and I had already threw the bluegill back, so I pitched it, the bait back out there, and I caught a pumpkin seed, which is in the bluegill family. Right here you can see I ended up just straight vertical jigging because I seen the fish under there, and I was able to coax it into biting. But I had a real big time. I did use the 13-foot rods some this week, but what I noticed was they're really stiff, and sometimes the fish were just sucking the bait in, and they weren't holding, they weren't really biting. They were just kind of, you'd feel a little bit of pressure. Well, the 13-foot rod, it will not balance out in your hand like a 10-foot will. So I ended up going to the 10-foot rod, so then I could detect those much smaller or lighter bites. But you just have to be versatile. I mean, 2 months ago, only thing I wanted to use was the 13-foot rod so I could get away from the boat, and here we are now. We're pitching and casting to them, and actually I much more successful with that. So it's interesting. I enjoy being able to see the fish bite. I enjoy picking these brush piles apart with a single pole, and that's what I'd done all week, was just used earlier in the week I was just using a single pole and catching those fish. And as far as for numbers, just the straight pole jigging, I think you can catch more fish just because you can get the bait to them quicker. You can, you're not, sometimes you'll pitch out, and if you miss the pile, you got to reel in and make another pitch. The other thing is when you're using a 1/16 ounce or an 1/8 ounce head, it's going to take it a little bit longer to get to those deeper piles, to where whenever you're dropping an 1/8 ounce head on a 1/2 ounce sinker, you're going to be right there on them. But I could see the big fish leaving the pile sometimes as my boat would get over there to them. So I was spot locking back off of it and pitching to them. But thanks for watching. I've got my guide license now, so if anyone wants to book a guide trip or do the Livescope tutorial, you can reach me at camocrappie@gmail.com, or you can go onto our Facebook page, Camo Crappie, and send me a message, and we will get you set up for a trip. So thanks for watching.